Welcome to Free Media. I'm Robby Soave.
And I'm Amber Duke. The Dems are fighting. Evergreen headline, but after DNC Vice Chair David Hogg announced that he would spend $20 million to primary Democrats in safe seats, strategist James Carville said it was the dumbest thing he'd ever heard. Here's how Hogg responded.
Well, so here's James Carville. Here's what he had to say about your idea. Take a listen.
The most insane thing I ever heard is the vice chair of the Democratic National Committee is spending $20 million running against other Democrats. Are we supposed to run against Republicans?
What's your response?
What's his plan to deal with our 27% approval rating? That's my question to him. The fact of the matter is right now, our party is in a crisis. We are seeing people lose faith in our party. They're losing faith in democracy across the country. And we need to make sure that we're getting people to vote for Democrats, not simply because we're not Donald Trump, but because we have a better message, a better option for them. Not simply the less bad of two options, as I think Carville tries to promote when he says, well, we just shouldn't say anything. Carville believes in a politics of being timid, of hiding. I believe in fighting. And that is what people want to see right now from the Democratic Party.
I'll give you the first crack at this one, Amber.
I think both of them don't get it.
Yeah.
Because both of them are advocating for a different style of messaging. Carville advocates for Democrats sort of sitting back and waiting for the Trump administration to make a mistake and allowing them to make themselves unpopular. David Hogg wants the Democrats to fight more aggressively and to tailor their messaging to provide a positive alternative to Donald Trump. But as I've said repeatedly on this show and others, it's not the messaging, it's the policies. Mm-hmm. If you don't make a concerted effort to change the policies that people find unpopular and just try to creatively message around them, you're not going to be able to dig yourself out of the hole that you're in.
I couldn't imagine myself agreeing more with David Hogg than with James Carville, but not so much in this interview, but in some statement he gave about his strategy. Why are you going to primary the safe people? It's like, well, it's in safe districts, so it's not to help Republicans win anything, but that there's just too many elderly, out-of-touch Democrats, and this whole kind of idea that in the party you just wait your turn. And the Democratic Party is so much more gatekeeping and just seniority-oriented than the Republican Party is now, and that's not good necessarily or fair necessarily to up-and-coming people who want to run. I think I agree with that. However, I think that observation is correct, but then David Hogg doesn't necessarily have the answers for what an appealing different style of politics would be to the old people in the establishment of the Democratic Party. You're right that it's the message and the messenger. I mean, I think they should be more aggressively exploiting the things that they think the Trump administration is doing that are wrong, or that they should be saying, look, Republicans want to destroy the Supreme Court or deport everyone or everything's going to be, or crash the economy and everything's going to be more expensive. That's exactly what Trump said he wasn't going to do. He isn't doing that. They should be out, trying to organize on that basis. Maybe it's just too early to get anybody worked up about. But then they also need otherwise normal-seeming, appealing people who are not like super woke or culturally progressive, and then also are not far-left economic radicals. I mean, maybe there's no one to find in Democratic circles who fits all those things. That's not true. There's certainly people you could find who would fit those molds. I don't know whether David Hogg or James Carville are more likely to arrive at that person. It's probably James Carville, honestly.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to consider that these are they're two people with obviously completely different backgrounds.
Right.
James Carville is an old school campaign strategist. For him, he wants a Democratic majority. It doesn't matter who the people are that make up that majority. David Hogg is probably considered more of a progressive activist who wants particular ideologues in those positions, even if it could potentially put a majority at risk. And so that's kind of where the two perspectives are coming from. But I think the problem with the Democrats' attempts to fight Trump so far is that they keep stepping in bear traps because they're not very good, I think, at optics. I mean, they could have legitimate complaints about due process concerns, but then they attach themselves to a guy who was like the poster child for deportation. And meanwhile, you've got a majority of Americans still saying that they want every single illegal immigrant deported, according to most recent polls. On the economy, all the Democrats who are complaining about the tariffs like 3 years ago were all advocating for Joe Biden's tariffs. So the only person who's really kind of tried to strike some middle ground on that is Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, who actually went to the Oval Office and met with Trump and then hid herself behind a binder, but has been saying, I agree with certain targeted tariffs. I think Trump's policy's gone too far. It just seems like they are so reactionary sometimes that they end up just like walking into a buzzsaw.
Yeah, that could be the case. We'll have to wait and see what themes they choose to run on. I think now Trump has undone, not all, but a lot of the tariff stuff. I think if that stuff had been happening right as we were ramping up into some campaign season, it would not have been great for the Republicans. The polls on that one, unlike the immigration issue, which you're right, the polls for doing more deporting of illegal immigration are there is clearly support for that. The tariffs were messier, depending on how it was asked and phrased to people. You can always say, should we stick it to those other guys and go rah America? And everyone goes, yes. I'm like, tariffs are popular. Should we, destroy the global economy and make prices more expensive because we're going to start a steel mill in the next town over? Everybody says, no, that's stupid. So it kind of matters how you ask it. But I think we're still going to find out which themes are resonating. So AOC right now is being talked about much more seriously as not just a Senate majority candidate or as a candidate to run against Chuck Schumer, but actually just as a presidential candidate in her own right. And Nate Silver, who I like and whose predictions are generally pretty sound, thinks she's more likely than just about anyone else to get the nomination. I think he might be right about that. Not that it's more likely than not, just that she will be. You can almost see it in a Trump 2016 sense of like her being a name with a base of support. I think her policies are insane, but you can't say she's not media savvy or politically savvy. She beat a person in her district. She's remained very successful even in a district that has trended toward Trump otherwise, versus a bunch of, replaceable Dem figures that will struggle to get traction against each other. It's not unthinkable.
No, it's not unthinkable. Crazy times.
You're trying not to think about it?
Yeah, it's somewhat terrifying.
Yeah, well, we shall see what unfolds in 2028. We have to get through 2026 first.
That's right.
We have to get through the rest of the year first. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow. See you later.